There's a lot of talk these days about equality and unity. And I have no doubt that this is an ideal for most people in the world. I'm not so sure that equality is an ideal that very many people believe can be achieved, but there are still a lot of people who believe that equality is an ideal worth fighting for. We are so often admonished to seek unity and act with equality, to strive to be one. But it's so difficult because there's so many differences in color and culture and kind. But this is our personal glory, isn't it? Our uniqueness, like a snowflake, never another just like us. So as someone has pointed out, those who are trying to bring about unity by either suppressing or destroying our diversity are up against nature itself. Our uniqueness is a thing we all have in common. One is an interesting term. It can be used in two different ways. One, as opposed to all others. That's when the team on the field raises that one finger to indicate we're number one, as opposed to all others. Or it can be used this way: no others. Now you got to pause for a moment and just think about the implication of that, how really incomprehensible it is. It's quite natural to organize and categorize and even stereotype. It's part of survival. Every organism recognizes certain patterns and shapes that represent for it others. And those others are categorized into friend, foe, or food. This kind of processing is unavoidable in terms of human thinking. And thinking most often leads to behavior. So to try and propagate unity by trying to not notice our differences or not think about the differences that exist among us is like trying not to think about a pink elephant. The very act of trying not to think of it is producing the thought. Perhaps some simple mind engages much less in this kind of dissection and fragmentation of the world. Children, for example, don't seem to notice the differences as much as when they become adults. We cannot overcome disunity and inequality by trying to look beyond one another's differences. It's just too difficult and unnatural and pretentious. We'll never achieve any kind of authentic unification that way. Developing unity or a sense of connectedness with everything else is a lot like developing gratitude. Suppose you're discontented and unhappy and frustrated even with your finances or your possessions or maybe your relationships. But in a moment of clarity, maybe brought on by some personal tragedy, you notice the immense value of what you already have. And quickly, that discontent, very naturally and without any effort, becomes an overwhelming feeling of gratitude. Unity is not something to be worked out. Unity is something to be recognized. Unity is something that already exists. Therefore, disunity and the idea of inequality, which is so often acted upon, is a lie, a gross misunderstanding of how the universe works. Think about this. There's a microorganism inside of you that is you, no matter how small it is. And so in this world, you and I are like small little microcosms, microorganisms in this world, but we're part of it. We are the world together. We look at a wall, for example, and we see one solid feature. But if you could get down to the microscopic level, you would see the space between each atom, between each molecule, and suddenly the wall would disappear. It would seem incredibly fragmented. But from our perception or perspective, we see it as a solid wall. Think about this. Let's suppose you're flying 10 or 20,000 feet above an agricultural area where there's several fields, what you're going to see from that perspective are all these beautiful symmetrical shapes with straight lines and sharp corners. But you know that back down on the ground, walking around that agricultural area, these fields are not straight. The lines aren't straight. The corners aren't sharp. And in some way, it's difficult to tell where one field ends and the other begins. It's all about perspective. We're connected. I think about what's called the overview effect. It's when astronauts leave the Earth's atmosphere and from far, maybe the International Space Center or whatever it is, or maybe from the moon, they look back at the Earth and they see this sphere, this one thing, and every astronaut has remarked about it in some way or another, that they see this thing as one organism. So the stress and anguish, bewilderment, and the sense of loss that's experienced so much in life exists because of our own misunderstanding or lack of understanding of how everything fits together. And that's really the journey that we're on, is finding out how it's all connected, because it already is. It already is one, no others. We're connected to the world, and the world is connected to us. As I said earlier, in the same way that all of our cells in our body that are separate and could be seen fragmented make up one body, that they do work together as one organism, one world, one universe. We are all connected. We all came from the same place. It's a complex but powerful ecosystem that we're a part of. And oftentimes the difficulty in getting along with others, or having a good relationship, or having a good society, or whatever it is, are brought on because of these misunderstandings of the fact that the unity already exists. We just need to notice it, see it, try to move to a different perspective and look at it a different way. Because the truth is, we'll never understand totally until we understand totality. The answer to any question in the universe is how it is connected to the whole.